The title of my webinar today is Practical Approaches to Balancing Diet for Increasing Milk Protein for Dairy Cattle. In particular, we will focus our attention on protein efficiency and how to improve it. The agenda that I have made is the following. Protein efficiency for the first topic, then we will consider the correlation between milk protein and casein, and after, which are the steps to optimize the nitrogen efficiency. The follow will be the main factor, external and from the diet, which affect the milk protein content in the milk. And then I have prepared two different diet formulated, one in a normal way with 30% of nitrogen efficiency, and the second one with a higher nitrogen feed efficiency at 32%. Why today we are here talking about nitrogen is always a problem, but nowadays this problem is even higher because of the global market situation for the raw material. Today we investigate that price. We see that in Italy now the price of milk, the spot milk price, is steady, is constant. So it's around 33-34 euro cent in June. And what is happening, that the situation with, as you know, with the raw material, especially protein sources of raw material, are very expensive. In the graph on the right side of the slide, we see the three most common sources of protein, like sunflower meal, rapeseed meal, and soybean meal, with prices very high. Since last 1 year, the prices increased at 50%. I don't spend any more time for this situation that everyone know, but the four main reasons for this increased prices: first are the reduction of the stock of raw material globally. The second point is the bad climatic condition in South America. Third, the very high demand of raw material from China. And the fourth is also a market speculation due by the fund of investment. In this slide, we see that the feed efficiency is very important in ruminant to improve margin, but we have very large variation in dairy cow and in beef cattle compared with the monogastric. Feed efficiency in ruminant is very poor, very low. The most part of the protein ingested is used for cow maintenance and also waste with urine and feces. And our aim is to minimize the nitrogen lost and maximize the quantity of nitrogen that ends up at the milk production. We cannot talk anymore of crude protein when we are dealing with dairy cattle, high producing dairy cattle. We need to separate crude protein concept from true or metabolizable protein and the amino acid. The cow doesn't understand what is crude protein. The rumen has a requirement for nitrogen, mostly in the form of ammonia and some amino acid and peptides. The post-ruminal requirement are for amino acid from both undegraded feed and microbes. In ruminant, the RUP, rumen undegradable protein, represent generally from 40 to 43% of the requirement in crude protein. On the other side, there is the rumen degradable protein, RDP, which represents the 60% of the requirement, but the percentage of metabolized is between 50 and 60%, depending mainly on the balance between fermentable energy from carbohydrate and degradable protein. And we need a good balance between them and a good synchronization. The percentage of RDP, rumen degraded protein, in roughage and other raw material is in function of them, and it is very variable, from 30% to 100%. For urea, we know it's 100%, and for other form of with higher rumen bypass protein, for example, corn, gluten, meal, this percentage is 35%. The rumen produce also 60 to 70% of energy requirement. This energy provided to the animal by the rumen comes from AGV, volatile fatty acid, which derive from the degradation of fiber, starch, and protein in the rumen. In this slide, I have reported the correlation between milk protein synthesis and casein. Milk synthesis takes place in the mammary gland alveoli by the milk secreting cells. Milk protein is composed mainly by milk casein. Casein range from 76 to 80% of the total milk protein, and the casein is fundamental for milk cheese attitude because at a pH of 4.6, rennet acts on milk protein by coagulating casein. A higher casein means higher cheese yield. That's why when we try to increase the milk protein, at the same time we increase also the casein, because there is very high correlation between milk casein and milk protein. When we stimulate, we increase the secretion of insulin, we have a higher production of milk protein. Energy intake also stimulates IGF, immunoglobulin, from the liver, and the protein supply per se is not an activator of milk protein, but can modulate some of the signaling like the IGF. To produce 1 liter of milk, 500 liters of blood have to pass through the udder. To produce 40 liters of milk per day, 20,000 liters of blood are circulating in the mammary gland. In the next slide, I have showed what is the normally efficiency of the protein in a dairy cow. Let's consider a cow that produces 35 kilograms of milk with 3.35% of milk protein. These cows usually consume, for example, 24 kg of dry matter per day with 16% of crude protein. It means that every day this cow produces 1.16 kilogram of milk protein. The protein efficiency is very low, is only 30%, because we provide every day through our feed 3.8 kilogram of protein, and only 30% is used by the animal with the milk protein through the milk. The other 70% is lost, 30% for the normal metabolism, for the maintenance, and around 38-40% is lost in the manure with urine and with feces. So this dairy cow needs protein for metabolism, but also lose 1.5 kilograms per day of protein in urine and feces. In this graph, it's very easy to see that with this meta-analysis, is an old study, but they show that the feed efficiency always improve the profit margin due to a feed cost reduction to have 1 liter of milk per day. When feed efficiency increase, also the profit margin in euro per day increase. Then this is feed efficiency is a very good value, but it depends from the stage of lactation, from the period of the year that we will see in another slide that I have prepared, but it changes a lot. It's very variable. In average, we would like to have 1.6 like feed efficiency in the first part of lactation, but the good average would be 1.45, 1.48. This is a clear slide where I wanted to show what are the milk protein factors that have an incidence to determine the percentage of milk protein. There are some external factors that with the diet we cannot change, and there are the other factors that we can edit, modify, improve with our diet formulation. For example, for external factor, the breed effect is very important. We have a negative factor with Holstein breed. Negative factor, it means that we will expect to have a lower percentage of milk protein. Positive factor is red breed, brown Swiss, Simmental or crossbreed. Genetically, this breed has a higher percentage of milk protein in the milk. Genetic factor. Low genetic level means that I am expecting to have a lower level of milk protein. The new genetics plan improve the percentage of milk protein in the milk. Also, milk production. There is an effect of solution, dilution, and concentration, where the high producing cattle have a lower percentage of milk protein, and the other side, the lower production level show a higher percentage of milk protein due to the effect of concentration. Daisy milk also affect the milk protein percentage. Around the peak of lactation, I have a low milk percentage content compared with the end of lactation, where the percentage of milk protein is higher. Seasonal effect, of course. In the summertime, there is a negative factor because the percentage of milk protein is lower due to many factors, to heat stress, to also a higher inflammation at the level of the small and large intestine. And in the winter time, there is a positive factor, as we know that the milk percentage in terms of protein is higher. Considering the diet effect, we can modify the energy level. With a low energy level, the protein percentage is lower. When the energy of our diets are higher, I'm expecting to have a higher percentage of milk protein. Also, the type of energy have an influence of the milk protein. If I have a low rumen degradable starch level or high concentration of fiber, the milk protein will be lower. When I do have a low level of fiber and a starch who comes from a most rumen degradable starch like cornflakes or wheat or barley, it increases the degradability of the starch in the rumen and it helps to increase the milk protein percentage. Of course, the amino acid has an influence. When I have low level of amino acid, I have a lower level of milk protein percentage. When I increase the amino acid level, first I started to balance the most limiting amino acid. When I increase this most limiting amino acid, I increase also the percentage of milk protein. When I have a low level of rumen undegraded protein, I do have also a lower percentage of milk protein. And when I do have a higher level of rumen undegraded protein, then I see that the milk protein percentage increase. The liver function is very important. When I have some cases of steatosis or worms or parasite, I do have a lower protein. When I have a healthy liver, especially in the summertime, if I help the liver with some rumen protected choline or niacin rumen protected, I have a healthier liver and it helps to have a higher percentage of milk protein. In this graph, I show the trend of lactose, protein and fat during the whole lactation period. Milk lactose is always directly proportional at the milk yield. So the peak of the lactose corresponds with the peak of the lactation. Milk protein and milk fat have a similar trend. They are high in the first 20 days of lactation because colostrum has just shifted to milk. Then decreasing, touching the lowest level at the peak of lactation and start again to increase in the second and third part of lactation. So what strategy we can have for nitrogen feed efficiency? What we can do to improve? First of all, we have to optimize nitrogen efficiency and amino acid addition. We have to determine, first of all, the most limiting nutrients. It can be energy or it can be protein. We have to evaluate the rumen nitrogen balance and the urinary nitrogen excretion. If it is high, then we have to work to reduce the content of soluble protein. Soluble protein should be from 35 to 38, maximum 40% of the total crude protein. If the grams of metabolizable protein are in excess, when we have to start to reduce gradually with small increments, this quote. Once we have matched metabolizable energy and metabolizable protein, and they are well balanced, then I will focus on amino acid. Methionine we should have from 1.15 to 1.18, but especially in summertime would helps a lot. It's not easy to reach this number according on CNCPS, but it helps a lot from milk protein percentage and also for heat stress and for the fertility in the summertime. At the same time, the lysine metabolizable should reach at 3. The ratio is 3, and the ratio between lysine metabolizable and methionine, the ideal is around 12.7. But later I will explain also how I can edit this ratio, because if I want to have a higher milk percentage protein, this ratio should be 2.40, not 2.7 or 3, but 2.4. Then I have always to keep the nitrogen in the rumen above 115-120% in order to give a lot of ammonia, which match with the high fermentable carbohydrate to produce the metabolizable protein in the small intestine. The second strategy could be the use of phytogenics. They helps a lot, and the main target of a combination of essential oil, spices and saponin is to improve this protein efficiency with more milk production or more protein content. In this case, we should add on the top of the diet. Or we could consider this concept like a matrix. Or I provide, administrate to our dairy this matrix product, and I can reduce the content, the feeds administrated of soybean meal or high fermentable carbohydrate. There are 3 active ingredients. Saponins. Saponin, using this kind of saponin, it's a mix from Chilaya, from Yucca scidigera. We can reduce the amination and the ammonia losses to improve microbial protein synthesis and volatile fatty acid production. Second, there are essential oils. These essential oils have an effect against protozoa, and so they have a bypass effect from the protein. And third, using a combination of spices, these spices improve the digestibility at the level of the small and large intestine. With a higher digestibility, we have an improve of absorption of nutrients in the intestine, and also we improve the salivation, which provide more bicarbonate for our cattle. Now in this slide I showed how we can increase the milk protein yield, so not percentage but yield, so grams per day of milk protein. So first of all, we have to increase the dry matter intake. Especially in summertime, it's not easy because of heat stress condition, but we can consider 4 points that I have touched here. For the DCAD, the DCAD, dietary cation anion difference, in the summertime, we can increase the percentage of potassium and sodium. In this case, we can add some potassium carbonate, which has 54% of potassium. So if I provide 120-150 grams per day, it helps a lot. But then I have also to consider that when I improve the potassium, I have to take in consideration also the magnesium, because the ideal ratio between potassium and magnesium is 4:1. So when I increase the potassium in my diets, I have also to increase the magnesium. If I provide magnesium carbonate, I have to consider it has 34% of magnesium. Or I can use magnesium oxide, which has 52% of magnesium, but the absorption coefficient is a bit different between the two salts. Considering mineral, so homeostasis of calcium, magnesium and potassium. Trace mineral, it's very important topic because not all the sources of trace mineral like zinc, manganese and copper are the same. They have different coefficients of absorption. The oxide forms are the less absorbable. Then we have sulfate, they are more absorbable. Chelates and glycinate are much more absorbable compared with sulfate and with oxide. And then now the last generation of trace mineral are the hydroxychloride, that they have a double coefficients of absorption compared with the sulfates. And the trace mineral have a big impact on the fiber digestibility. So we need to have also a good digestibility of our data, of our analysis. That's why the feed analyses are very, very important. In the follow slide, I show an analysis of feed, what we need to calculate correctly the data. And then fourth point is the use of probiotics. It's very helpful, especially in condition of heat stress, like using light yeast, Aspergillus oryzae and Niger, and yeast cell wall that works especially in the second part of GIT, gastrointestinal tract, and also vitamin PP or niacinamide that in the summer time, rumen protected, it helps a lot also to reduce the temperature in the body, like the Aspergillus, and it is a lipolytic vitaminic that helps the cow to move the fatty acid from the liver to the body. When I have a higher DCAD, like we see in this graph, we also increase the percentage of the fat. That's why increasing the percentage of potassium to 1.5, 1.8 will be ideal in the summertime, and the magnesium to 0.5, 0.55. I have an increase in milk fat percentage, an increase in dry matter intake, and also an increase of milk fat yield total, because I increase the digestion, so the animal produce even more milk. When I have a higher DCAD, I do have an increase in dry matter digestibility. Dry matter digestibility depends on the quality of the raw material we have in our diet, but also is affected by the mineral that we have in our ratio, and depends also from which source of trace mineral we have used in our ratio. NDF, neutral detergent fiber digestibility, also increase when we increase the DCAD of our ratio. This is just a feed analysis report on the left side. It's not clear because there are so many data, but I wanted to give you just an idea how we consider, what we consider here. Very important is to have some data about digestibility. In fact, we have NDF digestibility at 240 hours, it means at 10 days. And in this case, on the left side, we have a corn silage that we have the data that after 10 days, we still have 8.5% of undegraded NDF after 10 days. So the ideal percentage of UNDF 240 10 days in a complex diet, overall diet, should be from 8 to 9%. In the next slide, I have reported in the scheme. In the feed analysis, is very important also to consider the profile of the acid, how has been the fermentation. For example, for corn silage, the percentage of lactic acid should be at least 2.5 times more than acetic acid. The ideal would be 3 to 1. It's very important also to consider the starch, because not the percentage of starch, that in this case is 34%, but we have to see also in vivo starch digestibility in 7 hours. It means what is the percentage of our starch that in 7 hours in our rumen is fermentable. In this case, the percentage is 81%, but there is a big difference because if I leave in our feed bank the starch for only after 1 month, I will find a lower percentage of digestibility. After 7 or 9 months, like today, because we are in June and we have made the silage in the end of August, after 9 months, the percentage of this starch, digestibility of this starch, is much higher. So I have a higher production of milk only because I have a higher digestibility. This is the graph where I have shown that with the increasing from 7 to 8 to 9 to 10% of the undegraded NDF in 10 days, I have a reduction of dry matter intake. It's because the fiber is not well digested, because I have cut it too late because of weather condition, and my plant has been passed. That's why with the content of lignin is much higher and less digestible. Here I have reported 2 diets. One is normal without any amino acid, and I wanted to see later what is the percentage of nitrogen efficiency in this diet. This is a diet very well done for a production of 40 kg of milk, and the percentage here of protein in this diet is almost 17%. 17% is quite low, quite high percentage, but the main problem here in this diet is that we didn't reach the percentage of grams of methionine and lysine every day. We cover 90% of the needs. Even if metabolizable energy and metabolizable protein are met because we are at over 100%. So this diet works well, but it's not perfect. Then we see in the next slide, we see that we have here 30.47% of nitrogen efficiency, because we have here with the percentage of productive is 200 grams used in the milk. Then we have 250 grams lost with the feces, 230 grams lost in the urine, and the overall intake was 700 grams per day. because 700 grams per day multiplicated, this is the grams of nitrogen, 700 grams of nitrogen multiplicated 6.25, we will have the total content of protein ingested per day by the cow. In this slide also we see that with one cow production 40 liters of milk, we have different yields in terms of milk attitude to produce cheeses. Parmesan cheese has 80% of yield, so it means that with one cow we produce 3.27 kilograms of Parmesan cheese per day. Mozzarella is the other typical Italian cheese, fresh. The percentage of yield is much higher, 13%, so from 1 liter of milk we produce, the milk of one cow, the 40 liter, we produce 5 kilograms of mozzarella cheese. In this slide there is the old ratio that I showed before, but edited with the supplement of rumen-protected methionine and rumen-protected lysine. Here we see that we have met the percentage of methionine and we are very close with the percentage of lysine. In the graph below that we see that the red point for methionine is a little bit higher than 100%. In fact, we have 103%. On the right side, we see the lysine that we met because we are 98%, so we are almost perfect. The ratio here between lysine and methionine is 2.72. With a ratio of 2.72, where I have met the energy requirement for metabolizable energy, where I have met the metabolizable protein, where I have met the grams per day of metabolizable lysine and metabolizable methionine, with 2.72 I have the maximum production of milk content. I mean the grams per day of protein. So there is an association between liter of milk and percentage of milk protein. If I want, because I'm doing cheese, so I wanna take an effort for milk cheese, I can decide to reduce a little bit the production of milk in terms of liter per day, but I wanna increase the percentage of milk protein in this milk. So I have to work with a ratio of 2.35, maximum 2.40 for lysine and methionine. So we are not talking anymore about a ratio 3.0 from lysine and methionine, but the ratio for maximize the percentage of milk protein in our milk without taking in consideration the total milk production per day. In this case, I have to have a ratio 2.35, 2.40. But another things to remind is that if I give a supplementation of methionine into my cows, I always watch what is the percentage of total lysine, because there is a strong connection between protein and energy. So the lysine must be at least 7% is the ideal 7% of lysine on total metabolizable energy in terms of megacalorie, but at least 6.5. If I have lysine at 6.3%, and I add methionine, I'm not sure I will have a good feedback. In this ratio that I have formulated, adding methionine and lysine, we see that I have improved the nitrogen use efficiency to 32%. And this is the last slide where I have showed what I have told 1 minute ago. On the left side, at the bottom, there is the digestible methionine on percentage in MP is 2.6, and the lysine, the ideal, Van Hamburg 2015 said that the ideal ratio would be 7. And I'm here for any question